Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Drop, brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here for an interesting topic we're going to be hitting on surrounding Carolina football with the ACC no longer having an Atlantic and Coastal divisions, just merging into one no division, I guess divisionless conference would be the accurate way to describe it. We're going to be kind of debating, is this a positive thing or is this a negative thing for North Carolina? So, AJ, before I give my 2 cents on it, I'll kick it to you. Do you think the ACC getting rid of divisions is a positive or a negative for the Tar Heels moving forward?
I think it's a positive. Okay. And I know that goes against the grain with what a lot of people have said, but I think North Carolina needed to get out of that division. That was not a sexy division. And I think having an opportunity to play all the teams in the league, and I think they're more attractive programs and environments on the other side of the ledger. When Louisville's good, that's a great place. Florida State, Clemson's Clemson, NC State, and so on. I think that it's more interesting. I think playing everybody at least once every 4 years is good for the fan base. And I think because of that, it'll be more interesting because a more variety, a wider, greater flavor of programs are going to come in through Keenan during these 4-year cycles. So I think that's good for the fans. They'll be a little bit more jazzed up for some of these different teams. I think it got a little stale with the way things were. They're still going to play Duke. They're still going to play State. They're still going to play Virginia. But they don't have to play Pitt every year. They don't have to play Georgia Tech every year. They don't have to play not UVA, but Virginia Tech right now. When it's down, I think as much as Carolina fans hate losing to Virginia Tech, I still don't think the angst is there. I think that it's more appealing for fans to have more different teams come in with the schedule having greater variety. Now, as far as competing for a championship goes, I also think it's better. I think it's better because it's not just competing for an ACC championship. I'm going to look at this more from a national perspective standpoint. The ACC every year was a joke when the national media talked about the Coastal Division. They never spoke about it with any respect. So you're lumped into the division. And now North Carolina, not like they've been winning Coastal Division titles every year, so they have not taken advantage of the Coastal being bad, if you will.
No.
Carolina's been part of the problem with the Coastal. But if Carolina's going to spring up, and it does so against a full ACC with no divisions as opposed to doing it in the Coastal, it has a better chance of generating more national respect because it could do so in a year where Clemson is also on the schedule like this coming year. They go to Clemson and NC State, last 2 games of the year. You could tell me that's not an opportunity to really bolster your national reputation and Drake's chances of winning a Heisman Trophy? I think it's better. I think it's more appealing. I think you have a better opportunity to really see where the program is when you're judged against the rest of the league. And I also think for the conference, having its top 2 teams play in the championship game, whether it's a rematch or not, is best for the league. And if Carolina is in that group, they're going to have a lot more respect playing in a title game in that setting than if by winning the Coastal, even if the Tar Heels are dominant. And let's say they went out in the regular season this year and they beat South Carolina by 3 touchdowns. They pummel App State. They take care of Minnesota. And then, of course, they've got Campbell later in the year. And they cruise through the Coastal. I don't think they get a lot of respect. They didn't get any respect last year cruising through the Coastal. Now, those people ultimately were right because they lost their last 4 games. But I think getting rid of that joke that the ESPN guys talk about, the wheel of the ACC Coastal, the spin the wheel, whatever, who's going to win this week, that's over. That's gone. And they're no longer lumped into that. They'll now be judged with everybody else in the league. I think ultimately when you want to be a national player, when your mission is being a national player, like Mac has said 1,000 times over, and I know for a fact that is the mission, this is better moving forward.
You make great points, AJ. A lot of them I agree with in some different respects. I'm going to go the opposite of you, then. I'm going to say it's a negative for North Carolina moving forward. And here's kind of where my thinking aligns is I think we've seen over the last few years, you mentioned earlier, Carolina hasn't really been able to take advantage of a really weak Coastal since kind of Max came in. And to me, that kind of, when now that the conference is opening up, right, and you've got this Atlantic Division, like you said, that's so is held to a much higher regard in a lot of respects by fans and media people because of the teams that you have in it, the Clemsons, Florida States, who I know struggled recently, but it's typically one of the stronger programs in the league. NC State, Wake Forest, has been in an ACC championship game in recent years. And then I know you got some weaker teams. Even Syracuse has had good seasons in Boston College and Louisville kind of being the teams, especially in recent memory, that have struggled. But Louisville, like you mentioned, is a program that when it's good, things can be really good over there. I think now you're opening the league up. So the top two teams, as normal, are going to be the ones playing in the championship game. And to me, Carolina's job and goal of getting to an ACC championship game is that much harder now because they have to go through different teams. Now, from a fan's perspective, in a lot of ways, if you were a neutral of the league, I think it's more of an exciting thing. Because one of the things that I hate about the league, AJ, and I've hated in a lot of ways about ACC football the last few years, is you just feel like you play the same teams over and over again. There's this whole other half of the ACC, and you just, like Louisville, you play them like once every 10 years, it feels like. You just don't play them very often. Even the likes of Boston College and Syracuse in some respects. Carolina doesn't play those teams very often. And as somebody who's a neutral, I want to see those teams. I want to see these different programs, Carolina going up against these different programs instead of going up, like you mentioned, against the Pitts and against the Dukes all the time, and against the Georgia Techs. You want to see a little bit more variety because these are teams that are in your league. So I do think in that perspective, it's a positive. But when I look at the task that North Carolina now has to compete with the likes of Clemson, which is kind of the stated mission of the program. Max talked about it. They want to be a program that's competing for national titles. And we saw the gap between the two programs this past year in the ACC championship game. Heck, I was on the field. It was abundantly easy to see how much of a gap there still is between Clemson and North Carolina, despite the improvements that North Carolina has made. But now I think when you add these other teams into the mix, the Florida State, an NC State, a team for whatever reason Carolina just can't beat anymore. I know Carolina fans, I hate to hear that, but they, for whatever reason, can't beat them. Clemson can't beat Clemson. Now you're adding a few other teams into the mix, opening up the conference that I think, especially a team like Florida State, has a chance to be really good again this year. Probably has a chance to be better than North Carolina this year. I think that's probably more of a likely thing. I think now Carolina's job's a little bit harder instead of, in a way, being kind of shielded by the Coastal and getting to play these teams like your Georgia Techs who've been struggling. Even in Miami, that's just been abundantly up and down over the past few years. Just can't seem to steady the ship and figure it out over there. Virginia's been down over the last couple of years. Heck, even Virginia Tech's a team that last year it looks so far removed from some of the heights they've reached in the last 20 years and used to have under Frank Beamer. So I think Carolina's task is now that much harder to win an ACC title. And I think they're going to be very hard pressed to do so unless they really continue to develop and that product on the field develops. Because I think there's just a lot of teams that Carolina could struggle to beat this year, despite the fact that I think Carolina has a chance to be a pretty dang good football team coming up this year.
And that's precisely why I think this is good.
Mm-hmm.
Because the mission shouldn't be what it's been. I mean, whatever the program's results have been. It's ironic. They didn't have divisions a couple of years ago and they got to the Orange Bowl. I know that was a weird year. It was a weird year, but if I'm North Carolina, I want to play Clemson and Florida State and Louisville and NC State and Virginia Tech and Miami and whoever the flavor of the day is in the rest of the leagues, be it Syracuse or whoever. I want to play them. Mm-hmm. You want to play. A lot of the people listening and watching this podcast right now want Carolina to go to the SEC. Well, what the hell do you think you're going to face over there?
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I think if you're concerned
basketball,
about leaving the Coastal. If you're concerned about leaving the Coastal and you want to, the rest of the ACC, I just think that North Carolina needs that. I think that the program needs to be pushed. It needs to be stressed because it can be a lot better than it's been. I know that Mac absolutely, totally believes it can get back to where it was when he was there when he left in 1997, where it was on the brink of really being a consistent national team, a club that was ready to bump its head against the ceiling and finally break through. It was so close. I think they can get back there again. And if they do that in a lump league of 14 teams, let's say the top 5 or 6 are all ranked. You're not looking at them as separate divisions anymore. It was almost like two conferences under one umbrella. Now it's all one. You're judged more against the rest of the peers in the league. And I think kids are going to find it more intriguing to go to North Carolina and play there because it's going to be a little bit more of an interesting schedule. They've got good non-conference games lined up down the road. They have a nice schedule. They got Notre Dame coming up again a bunch here in the 2020s. They've got a home and home with Purdue coming up. They've got these South Carolina games. So I think that they are building a schedule that should help them attract kids, give them opportunities to win games and make a splash and also be relevant. And if the league schedule is a little bit tougher, I say bring it on. Mm-hmm. North Carolina football has been really good at times, but it never sustains it. So I think having more challenges there to strengthen the program to the point where it can sustain things once it finally gets to where Mac believes it can and should be, that's the mission. And you're never going to achieve that mission if you're in the Coastal and you've got a big road game at Georgia Tech at the Mercedes-Benz Dome with 25,000 empty seats in there.
Yeah. No,
you're still going to have to play that game sometimes, but not every year. No. I know right now, man, when we did all of our, and this sucks because Georgia Tech's got a great football history. Mm. And I think it's a shame Georgia Tech football has been what it's been. They should be so much better there. They got wonderful. They won a national title in 1990. Not that long ago. Mm-hmm. All right. But I think North Carolina fans have gotten bored playing Georgia Tech. I think they're somewhat
bored of watching them play Georgia Tech, to be honest with you.
I think they're bored of playing Duke.
Despite the fact that they can't beat Georgia Tech, but.
Yeah, I mean, they're bored of playing Duke, but at least it's Duke. It's right down the road. That's interesting. They'll never get bored of playing State. And I think the Virginia aspect is important to retain that.
Yeah, I think Virginia, the rivalry is fun. It's a shame they've been like they have been, but it's a fun rivalry. I think the league needs to go to a 9-game schedule. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to lump everybody in there, you need another game to help further determine who the top two teams truly are. It's a good point.
Because you could still get an imbalance in schedule. They need to get rid of the FCS game, get rid of that crap. No one wants to see that. Mm-hmm. And
throw it out the window.
Play a Power 5 team outside the league, play a MAC team, and then play New Mexico State, someone like that, and be done with it. 12 games, you get 3 non-conference games, and 9 in the league. There's enough variety in the league; it won't get stale, and you could really determine a true champion that way. Yeah. And what if there's a year where they get FSU, they get Miami, they get Virginia Tech, they get Syracuse, they get Louisville, they get NC State. They don't play Clemson in the regular season, but then they play them in the ACC title game. It's a pretty good schedule, and it's an interesting schedule. And I think that's better for the league. I think it's certainly better for North Carolina.
No, you make great points, and a lot. I agree with a lot of what you said. I think I'm more looking at it from a perspective of, okay, well, Carolina's like barely been able to win the Coastal Division the last 15 years. Now they got 7 more teams they have to go through. I do think, though, you mentioned one thing I really agree with is this could maybe help push that standard forward, push the expectations forward a little bit of like, okay, well, now you've got 7 other teams you got to compete against. You can't just sit in your little bubble over here in the Coastal Division. You guarantee you're going to have 3 or 4 mediocre teams in the league in that side every year. And you're like, well, I only really need to compete against three teams over here, 4 teams. Now you've opened yourself up to the whole league. So the standard and the expectations of how you have to perform on a weekly basis should go up because you're just going to more than likely be playing some more talented ACC teams along the way now. But I look at it like, well, I mean, now that it's wide open now. And again, if Carolina would have been coming into this divisionless ACC, having won 3 out of the last 6 Coastal divisions, I might feel a little bit different about it. But it's just a team that's, even last year, win the Coastal, don't win a game after. I mean, you know what I mean, AJ? It's just, I think Carolina's task has just got that much harder, but hopefully, like you've said, and I think from a Carolina fan's perspective, they want this to be true. Hopefully it maybe helps slowly and steadily, or maybe even more rapidly, push the standard, the expectations up a little more, because that complacency that you could almost kind of have a little bit in the Coastal Division, can't have that anymore. You got to be one of the 2 best teams in the league. It's just how it is now. So,
well, they had won 2 of the last 7 Coastal titles. Mm-hmm. And in one of the years they didn't, which there was no Coastal, they did go to the Orange Bowl. Mm-hmm. So they had a little bit of success at times in the division, but I also think it helps recruiting.
You would think it would, yeah. You would think it would.
Well, you don't have to worry about bringing kids in every other year for Georgia Tech in town. Mm-hmm. and again, I don't mean to beat on Georgia Tech, but the Yellow Jackets haven't moved the needle with the fan base and a lot of things for a while. And it's just an example.
They've been poor.
And look, Wake's not going to move it either. They've been better, but people generally don't get too excited about.
No, they're not a team that moves the needle.
It's not from a me standpoint.
No,
I love seeing everybody, and I'm not saying
AJ, you've seen it. They've had one-loss teams that the smallest stadium in the league is 50% full.
It's just the way it's just perception.
Different. Yeah.
We know because we see the numbers with our content.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State stunk when they came in Keenan, and the numbers were off the charts.
Yes, Florida State, man. Yeah, it's different.
And look at how quickly Florida State has been anointed the new national player again. They've returned.
They're the team they had probably going to underachieve the most because of that. Because they're they're back now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll hit on. And Jordan Travis is better than Drake May.
Jordan Travis is the best quarterback in the nation somehow now.
I think Jordan Travis is he's improved tremendously. We'll talk about that stuff later on in the summer, but as we get closer to the season. But I just think overall it's a good thing. And Mac Brown is not afraid of competing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken a job at a place that had won 5 games in 2 years.
Yeah.
And had a lot of trouble and was still climbing out from some of the previous crap that was hurting the school. So they have a challenge. They're well established. They're well equipped to meet the challenge. Now the question is, will they do it or not?
Mm-hmm.
That remains to be seen, whether they were in the Coastal or the way it is now.
Yeah, TBD for sure. Well, AJ, again, if you want to get involved in this conversation, head on over to TarIllustrated.com. If you're not a premium subscriber, become a premium subscriber, just $8.33 a month. We post all of this content on our website, obviously. And if it gets posted on our website, it also gets posted on our message boards. Come join the conversation over there. We want to hear your take on this. Do you think it's a positive? Do you think it's a negative? Get involved over there. Come sign up. And there's so many other perks because 90% of the content that we put out only goes on the boards. That's where the real value and the intel of the people who spend their hard-earned money to be our subscribers and join the THI family. That's where the value comes in. So come join. And again, we'll be doing a lot of these daily drops throughout the off season. So there'll be a lot more opportunity to come get involved in the conversation, in the debate as well. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. We appreciate y'all watching. As always, another episode of the Daily Drop. Make sure you like the video below and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.